Whispers on. A sensual bedtime story for adults, presented by Bedtime Stories. Dim the lights, settle in, and let yourself relax completely. And now, let the story begin. The rain had been a relentless confidante all afternoon, a rhythmic patter against the slate roof, and the broad leaves of the ancient oaks that ringed Blackwood Hollow. Ilara watched it from the vast arched window of the lodge's main living area, a book lying forgotten in her lap. The sky was a bruised purple, promising a long dark night, and the air held the metallic tang of earth and wet stone. She was alone, deliciously so, in a place designed for quiet contemplation, for the stripping away of the world's insistent demands. Blackwood Hollow wasn't just a lodge. It was an escape, a masterfully crafted sanctuary of dark wood, rugged stone, and sumptuous fabrics. A grand fireplace, currently cold, dominated one wall, flanked by shelves overflowing with leather-bound books and intriguing artifacts. Plush velvet sofas and armchairs were arranged invitingly, and Persian rugs muted the sound of her own footsteps. It was meant to be a solo retreat, a chance to finish the final edits on her manuscript without distraction. But the solitude, while initially welcomed, had begun to feel a little too vast, a little too echoing. She traced a finger along the condensation on the window pane, the chill seeping into her skin. The truth was, she hadn't touched the manuscript since arriving. Her mind, usually a hive of narrative and character development, felt strangely blank, receptive only to the melancholic beauty of the storm. A deep sigh escaped her, a sound swallowed quickly by the drumming rain. Just as the last vestiges of twilight began to fade, giving way to the inky blackness of a moonless sky, a sudden unfamiliar crunch of tires on the gravel driveway broke the hypnotic rhythm of the downpour. Ilara froze, her heart giving a startled lurch. She wasn't expecting anyone. The lodge was booked exclusively for her. She rose slowly, her cashmere sweater rustling softly, and moved closer to the window, peering out into the gloom. The headlights of a dark SUV cut through the rain, illuminating a figure as he stepped out, pulling a large duffel bag from the back seat. Her breath caught. Reese. Of all the people. Her mind scrambled, trying to recall if their mutual friend Liam had mentioned him staying here. No, it was impossible. He was meant to be on assignment in Geneva. Yet, there he was, a tall, imposing silhouette, against the storm-lashed trees, his broad shoulders hunched slightly against the rain as he jogged towards the covered porch. A mix of bewilderment and a peculiar, unwelcome thrill shot through her. Reese Thorne was a force of nature, a man whose presence could fill a room even when he was silent. He was Liam's business partner, a brilliant, driven architect, and a man Ilara had always found utterly captivating, in a way that was both intriguing and slightly intimidating. Their paths had crossed only a handful of times, always in group settings, always formal, yet there had always been an unspoken current between them, a flickering awareness that she had, until now, attributed to an overactive imagination. The doorbell chimed, a surprisingly delicate sound given the roaring storm outside. Ilara hesitated, then straightened her posture, pushing away the unexpected flutter in her stomach. She opened the heavy oak door. Reese stood on the threshold, a fine sheen of rain on his dark hair and the shoulders of his charcoal suit jacket. He looked, as always, impossibly elegant, even slightly disheveled by the weather. His eyes, the startling blue of a winter sky, widened slightly when he saw her, a flicker of surprise mirroring her own. Ilara. His voice, a deep, resonant baritone, was laced with genuine astonishment. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same, Reese," she replied, a small nervous laugh escaping her. "I thought I had the place to myself." She gestured for him to come in. "Please, don't just stand there in the rain." He stepped inside, bringing with him the scent of rain, damp wool, and something uniquely his own. A clean masculine aroma that was subtly intoxicating. He ran a hand through his wet hair, droplets glistening. "Liam booked this for me. A last-minute change of plans, an urgent project that needed isolation." He swore it was vacant. A wry smile touched his lips, a flash of white against the faint stubble on his jaw. Seems he double-booked us. Ilara's own smile felt a little wobbly. Apparently so. The lodge, while spacious, had only 2 bedrooms, both with ensuite bathrooms. It was hardly a sprawling estate designed for multiple unexpected guests. The implications of their shared accommodation bloomed in her mind, hot and sudden. "Well," Rhys said, his gaze sweeping over the grand living space, then settling back on her. "It's a pleasant surprise, at least. And a warm welcome out of that deluge." "It is," she agreed, feeling a blush creep up her neck. I'll just go check on the booking. Maybe there's been a mistake." But she knew, with a sinking certainty, that Liam, in his typical absent-minded fashion, had simply forgotten she was here. "Don't trouble yourself," Rhys said, his voice softening. "Even if there was a mistake, I doubt we can rectify it tonight. The storm's too bad to drive anywhere else, and I haven't seen another soul for miles." He gestured vaguely towards the dark woods outside. "Looks like we're stuck together." Stuck together. The words hung in the air, charged with an undeniable intimacy. Ilara found herself unable to break eye contact. His gaze was intense, analytical, yet held a warmth that made her shiver, despite the relative warmth of the lodge. "Right," she managed, finally looking away, her gaze landing on his duffel bag. "Well, let me show you to the 2nd bedroom then." He nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Lead the way." As she walked towards the hallway, she felt his eyes on her, a palpable weight. The lodge suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, the silence between them less comfortable and more. The 2nd bedroom was as elegantly appointed as the first, with a large 4-poster bed, crisp white linens, and a view of the forest. "The bathroom is through there," she indicated, pointing to a door. "Towels and toiletries are usually stocked." "Thank you, Ilara," he said, setting down his bag. He took off his jacket, revealing a perfectly tailored shirt that stretched across his broad chest. The simple act felt strangely significant, a shedding of the formal facade. "You seem to have settled in nicely." "I try," she said, feeling suddenly self-conscious of her own casual attire. "I was attempting to get some work done." "The manuscript?" he asked, his brow furrowing slightly. "Liam mentioned you were close to finishing." "I am," she lied smoothly. "Just a few final touches." She knew he was a discerning reader, and the thought of him ever laying eyes on her current stagnant project filled her with dread. "Well, I'll leave you to it then," he said, though his eyes lingered on her for a moment too long. "I'll just get changed and then perhaps we could light that impressive fireplace. It's a little chilly in here." "Good idea," she said, grateful for the distraction. "I'll find some kindling." Back in the living room, Ilara moved with a renewed sense of purpose, gathering logs from the stacked woodpile and kindling from a wicker basket. Her mind raced. What would they talk about? How would they navigate this unexpected intimacy? She had always admired Rhys from a distance, respected his intelligence and sharp wit, but had also kept a polite professional barrier between them. Now that barrier felt flimsy, on the verge of crumbling. When Rhys emerged a few minutes later, he had changed into dark jeans and a simple fitted charcoal sweater that emphasized the sculpted lines of his torso. His hair was still damp, curling slightly at his nape, and he looked less like the formidable architect and more like a rugged, captivating stranger. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, his voice softer now, less formal. "I think I've got it," she replied, struggling slightly with a particularly stubborn log. He chuckled, a low, warm sound that resonated through the room. "Let me." He knelt beside her, his proximity immediately raising the temperature of the air around them. His hands were strong and capable as he expertly arranged the wood, adding kindling and a fire starter. In moments a small flame flickered, licking at the dry wood. As the fire began to catch, casting dancing shadows on the walls, Rhys sat back on his heels, his gaze meeting hers. The firelight caught the blue in his eyes, making them seem even more intense. "There," he said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Much better." "Thank you," she said, feeling a strange warmth spread through her, unrelated to the growing heat of the fire. She remained kneeling for a moment, simply watching the flames, acutely aware of him beside her. The silence stretched, comfortable rather than awkward, filled with the crackle of the fire and the continued drumming of the rain. "Would you like a drink?" she offered, finally breaking the spell. "I saw some wine in the cellar and I think there's some whiskey too." "Whiskey sounds perfect," he said, rising with a fluid grace. A little something to ward off the chill. Ilara fetched the whiskey and 2 tumblers from the well-stocked bar in the corner. As she poured, she felt his eyes on her again, a gentle, appraising warmth. She handed him his glass, their fingers brushing for a fleeting moment. A spark, a tiny jolt, passed between them. Her breath hitched. They settled onto one of the plush sofas facing the fire, the soft glow illuminating their faces. The rain outside intensified, a furious drumming that only served to heighten the sense of cozy isolation within the lodge. "So," Rhys began, taking a sip of his whiskey, "what brings you to Blackwood Hollow truly, besides the final touches on the manuscript?" His gaze was knowing, a hint of challenge in his eyes. Ilara laughed, a genuine, unforced sound. "You see right through me, don't you?" She took a sip of her own whiskey, the amber liquid warming her throat. "Truthfully, I'm a bit blocked." Liam suggested a change of scenery. He said this place always inspired him. Liam's definition of inspiration usually involves a deadline and copious amounts of caffeine, Rhys mused, a fond smile playing on his lips. "But I understand. Sometimes you need to disconnect to reconnect." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "And you haven't been able to reconnect?" She shook her head, feeling a surprising ease in confiding in him. "It's like the words just dried up. I stare at the screen and nothing comes. It's frustrating." "Perhaps you're trying too hard," he suggested, leaning back into the cushions, his arm resting along the top of the sofa, perilously close to her shoulders. "Sometimes the best ideas come when you're not looking for them." "Easy for you to say," she countered playfully. "You're an architect. You deal in concrete structures, not the fickle whims of imagination." "Ah, but even structures begin as abstract ideas, Ilara," he said, his voice dropping to a softer register. "A feeling, a need, a vision. And then you have to wrestle it into existence, brick by brick, word by word." He turned slightly towards her, his knee brushing hers through the fabric of their clothes. The casual contact sent a shiver through her. "There's an artistry to it, a passion. And sometimes, passion needs to be rekindled." His words hung in the air, laden with a double meaning that was impossible to ignore. Her gaze met his, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The fire crackled, the rain hammered, and the world outside seemed to recede, leaving only the two of them, bathed in the warm, flickering light. "How do you rekindle it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The question felt less about her writing and more about something else entirely. Rhys's eyes held hers, a silent intensity passing between them. "Sometimes," he said, his voice a low murmur that seemed to caress her ears, "you just need to let go. Stop forcing it. Allow yourself to be open to new experiences, new sensations." He lifted his hand and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought he would reach for her face. Instead, his fingers brushed lightly against her arm, sending goosebumps prickling over her skin. To feel again. The touch was electric, feather-light, yet it ignited a fire within her that had nothing to do with the logs in the grate. She felt a warmth bloom in her chest, spreading rapidly through her veins. Her breath felt shallow, catching in her throat. He slowly withdrew his hand, though his gaze remained locked on hers. "It's been a long day," he said, his voice a little rougher now. "And a longer journey. I should probably get some rest." He made no move to get up. "Yes," she agreed, though she felt a desperate urge for him to stay, to continue this mesmerizing dance of words and unspoken desires. "Of course." Another stretch of silence, filled with the undeniable tension that now thrummed between them. The air was thick with it, a palpable energy that made her acutely aware of every subtle shift in his posture, every slight movement of his lips. "Unless," he said, his voice even lower now, almost a whisper, "you'd like another drink?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to his mouth, then back up to his eyes. I think I would." He smiled, a slow, sensual curve of his lips that sent a fresh wave of heat through her. "Good." He reached for the bottle of whiskey, refilling their glasses. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, as if he too was savoring every moment of this unexpected, intimate encounter. As he handed her the fresh glass, his fingers brushed hers again, this time lingering just a fraction longer. Her skin tingled where he touched her. She felt herself leaning imperceptibly closer to him, drawn in by his magnetic presence, by the soft scent of his skin and the subtle musk of whiskey and wood smoke. "Tell me about Geneva," she prompted, desperate to break the spell, yet simultaneously wanting to prolong it. He leaned back again, but this time, his arm remained along the back of the sofa, his fingers now resting lightly on the cashmere of her sweater, just at the curve of her shoulder. The touch was light, almost imperceptible, yet it felt like a brand, searing her skin. He began to speak, his voice a low, soothing cadence, describing the complex negotiations of his latest architectural project, the intricate dance of international politics and design. But Ilara found it increasingly difficult to focus on his words. All she could feel was the warmth of his fingers through her sweater, the subtle pressure, the way her body instinctively tilted towards his. The rain outside began to lessen, softening to a gentle patter, but the storm within her was only just beginning. She found herself watching his lips as he spoke, mesmerized by their movement, imagining the feel of them against hers. The thought was so vivid, so potent, it stole her breath away. He paused, sensing her distraction, his gaze once again sharp, questioning. "Ilara?" She blinked, feeling a flush creep up her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I got lost." He chuckled softly, a knowing glint in his eyes. Lost in thought? Or lost in the moment? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. She met his gaze, and this time, she didn't look away. There was no escaping the truth of it. She was lost, completely and utterly, in the moment. In him. He shifted, turning fully towards her now, his leg brushing hers more firmly. His hand moved from her shoulder, slowly, deliberately, tracing a path down her arm, his thumb brushing over the soft skin of her inner elbow. Her breath caught, a small gasp escaping her lips. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice now a mere whisper, barely audible above the dying crackle of the fire. He leaned closer, his head tilting, his eyes searching hers, asking a silent question. "You're very beautiful." The compliment, delivered with such quiet intensity, sent a wave of heat through her. She felt her eyelids flutter, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to speak, to respond, but the words were lodged somewhere in her throat, strangled by the fierce longing that had suddenly consumed her. His face was so close now, she could feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek, smell the subtle, intoxicating scent of him. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there for a long, agonizing moment before returning to her eyes. The unspoken tension between them was almost unbearable, a shimmering, vibrant energy. "May I?" he whispered, the question a soft caress against her ear. She didn't need words. She simply nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, her eyes wide, vulnerable, filled with a desperate yearning. And then he was kissing her. It began softly, tentatively, a gentle press of his lips against hers, a hesitant exploration. It was a question, an invitation, and she answered it with an immediate, fervent response. Her lips parted, welcoming him, and she felt the soft brush of his tongue, a delicate dance that sent shivers down her spine. The kiss deepened, slowly, exquisitely. His hand moved from her arm, finding its way to the nape of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, gently pulling her closer. Her own hands, almost without conscious thought, found their way to his chest, gripping the soft fabric of his sweater. She could feel the steady, strong beat of his heart beneath her fingertips. His mouth moved over hers with increasing urgency, a sensual exploration that left her breathless. She tasted whiskey and something uniquely him, warm, masculine, utterly intoxicating. All thoughts of manuscripts, of professional boundaries, of the world outside, vanished. There was only the heat of his lips, the scent of his skin, the intoxicating feel of his body pressed against hers. His thumb stroked the sensitive skin behind her ear, sending a jolt of pleasure through her. She arched into him, her body humming with a desire that was both exhilarating and terrifying. This was more than just a kiss. It was a revelation, an unleashing of a passion she hadn't known she possessed, a passion that had been lying dormant, waiting for him. He groaned softly, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through her, and deepened the kiss further, his tongue intertwining with hers in a slow, sensual rhythm. Her head swam, the room tilting slightly. She felt herself melting against him, dissolving into the exquisite sensation of his touch, his taste, his presence. The fire had dwindled to glowing embers, casting long, dancing shadows around them. But Ilara felt only heat. His hand slid from her neck, down her back, pressing her even closer, until there was barely any space left between them. The soft fabric of her sweater, the rougher texture of his, the warmth of their skin beneath. She tangled her fingers in his hair, pulling him closer still, wanting to drown in the intoxicating pleasure of his kiss. This was what she had been missing, this intense, undeniable connection, this raw, unbridled desire. His lips moved from her mouth, trailing a path down her jaw, to the sensitive skin of her neck, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. His breath was warm against her skin, and she felt the soft brush of his stubble, a delicious friction. "Whispers on," he murmured, his voice thick with desire, his lips pressing against the pulse point at her throat, sending shivers through her entire body. "Whispers on your skin." The words, barely audible, sent a jolt of pure sensation through her. The world outside, the rain, the lodge, all faded into insignificance. There was only the exquisite torment of his touch, the intoxicating scent of him, and the promise of everything yet to come. Her body ached for more, for the full, unrestrained expression of the desire that pulsed between them. She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that this night was only just beginning. Her breath hitched, a fragile sound lost in the soft roar of the fire and the insistent drumming of the rain. His words, "whispers on your skin," echoed not just in her ears, but through every nerve ending, an electric current sparking a wildfire of need. She didn't need to ask for more. Her body was already a symphony of urgent requests, leaning into him, her fingers curling almost imperceptibly into the soft fabric of his shirt. He understood. He always seemed to understand. His hands, which moments ago had been a delicate caress, now moved with a new, emboldened purpose. One palm slid from her waist, tracing the curve of her hip, then upward, beneath the hem of her silk slip, finding the warm, yielding skin of her lower back. The other hand, still at her throat, thumb brushing the pulse point, tilted her head gently, lifting her gaze to meet his. His eyes, dark pools in the dim light, held a raw, unvarnished hunger that mirrored her own. There was no hesitation, no doubt, only a shared, profound certainty. He lowered his head, not for a kiss, not yet, but to rest his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling, warm and quickening. "Let me," he murmured, his voice a low thrum against her skin, a vibration that resonated deep within her core. She closed her eyes, a silent assent, a complete surrender. The world narrowed to the exquisite pressure of his body against hers, the intoxicating scent of pine, and his unique masculine warmth. The subtle shifting of his weight as he began to move. His fingers, deft and knowing, found the delicate straps of her slip, pushing them down her shoulders. The cool silk whispered over her skin as it fell, pooling around her feet, leaving her clad only in the sheer lace of her panties. A shiver not of cold but of pure anticipation danced over her. She felt deliciously exposed, yet utterly safe in his presence. His eyes, when she opened hers, devoured her. A slow, appreciative journey that made her skin tingle. He knelt before her, his gaze never leaving hers, and with a reverence that stole her breath, he pressed a soft kiss to her bare midriff, just above the lace. The touch was feather-light, yet it ignited a deep ache, a yearning for closer contact. He rose again, his hands finding her shoulders, then sliding down her arms, drawing her closer until her bare skin was flush against the fine wool of his trousers, the crisp cotton of his shirt. The contrast was a delicious torment, her eager flesh pressing against the barriers of his clothing. She found herself reaching for him, her fingers fumbling with the buttons of his shirt, a sudden impatience seizing her. He chuckled, a low, husky sound that vibrated through her, and gently took her hands in his, stilling them. "My turn," he whispered, his lips brushing her temple, then her cheek, until they hovered just inches from her mouth. Every layer, a promise. And then, his lips were on hers. It wasn't a demanding kiss, not yet. It was a slow, tender exploration, a taste, a soft inquiry that promised depths, yet to be plumbed. He savored her, his mouth moving with exquisite gentleness, teasing her with the barest pressure, the softest brush of his tongue against hers. She responded instantly, her own lips parting, inviting him in. The kiss deepened, a slow, sensual dance of longing and discovery. It was a kiss that spoke volumes, a silent declaration of the desire that had simmered between them for so long, finally unleashed. His hands, no longer restraining, now moved with a purpose she craved. They slid under her arms, pulling her even closer, until her breasts were soft mounds pressed against his chest, the lace of her panties a fragile barrier against the heat of his trousers. His fingers tangled in her hair, tilting her head back slightly, allowing him deeper access to her mouth, to the fervent answering of her tongue. The kiss became more urgent, more insistent, a delicious hunger blossoming between them. She felt the subtle shift in his body, the burgeoning evidence of his desire mirroring her own. A low moan escaped her, a soft, involuntary sound of pleasure and need. Her hands, freed, instinctively found purchase on his shoulders, then slid upward to cup his jaw, her thumbs stroking the sharp line of his cheekbone, feeling the strong pulse that throbbed beneath her touch. He broke the kiss, a breathy gasp, but kept his forehead pressed against hers, his eyes closed for a moment as if gathering his strength or simply savoring the intensity of the moment. "You are exquisite," he breathed, his voice rough with emotion. "More than I ever dreamed." Then, with a renewed surge of energy, his hands were on the buttons of his shirt. And this time, she joined him. Their fingers worked together, fumbling slightly in their sheer eagerness, until the crisp cotton parted, revealing the taut, muscular planes of his chest. She inhaled sharply, a delicious scent of his skin rising to greet her. He shrugged off the shirt, letting it fall to the floor with a soft rustle, and then he was there, bare to the waist, his skin warm and firm beneath her hesitant touch. Her fingers explored, tracing the defined lines of his collarbones, the gentle swell of his pectorals, the tantalizing path of dark hair that narrowed as it descended towards the waistband of his trousers. Each touch was a spark, igniting a deeper fire within her. He shivered beneath her touch, a small tremor that thrilled her. "My turn," she whispered, echoing his earlier words, her voice huskier than she intended. With a boldness that surprised even herself, she reached for the buckle of his belt, her fingers brushing against the warm denim of his jeans. He watched her, his eyes dark and intense, a silent invitation, a challenge. The buckle yielded, then the button. Her fingers, emboldened by his unwavering gaze, slid to the zipper, slowly, deliberately lowering it. The sound, a soft rasp in the quiet room, was exquisitely sensual. He held his breath, his chest rising and falling with quick, shallow breaths. She pushed the denim down over his hips, revealing the dark fabric of his briefs beneath. He stepped out of his jeans, then his socks, until he stood before her, clad only in his dark briefs, a magnificent testament to masculine strength and desire. The firelight danced over his skin, highlighting the lean planes of his stomach, the powerful curve of his thighs. He was magnificent, and she felt a surge of possessive desire, a fierce craving to feel every inch of him against her. He reached for her then, pulling her into his embrace, skin to skin, the last fragile barrier of her lace panties and his brief, now a sweet torment. The warmth of his body enveloped her, a delicious shock that settled deep in her core. Her hands wrapped around his waist, her fingers splaying across the firm expanse of his back, feeling the ripple of muscle beneath her touch. His arms encircled her, holding her tightly, possessively, his chin resting gently on the crown of her head. For a long moment, they simply stood there, swaying slightly in the soft light, the only sounds the crackle of the fire, the insistent rain, and the synchronized beat of their hearts. It was a moment of profound intimacy, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they were about to embark on. Then, with a gentle pressure, he guided her backwards towards the bed. The luxurious mattress, piled high with soft linens, beckoned. He didn't release her, instead lowering them both onto the bed in a graceful, unhurried motion. They landed softly, a tangle of limbs and hungry sighs. He propped himself up on one elbow, gazing down at her, his eyes filled with a tenderness that made her heart ache. His fingers, ever so gently, traced the line of her jaw, then drifted lower, over her collarbone, to the delicate lace of her panties. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice a low caress. "So incredibly beautiful." She reached up, her fingers finding the slight stubble on his jaw, a delicious rasp against her skin. "You too," she whispered, her voice husky with emotion. "More than words can say." He leaned in, his lips finding hers once more, a kiss that was deeper, more consuming than any before. His tongue tangled with hers, a passionate dance that left her breathless and yearning. His free hand, meanwhile, was exploring. It traced the curve of her hip, then slipped under the lace, finding the warm, soft skin of her inner thigh. A gasp escaped her, a fragile sound of pure sensation. His touch was exquisite, lingering, teasing, each stroke a silent promise of pleasure yet to come. He moved slowly, deliberately, driving her to the brink of exquisite agony. Her hips arched involuntarily, silently pleading for more, for the release that only he could offer. "Easy, love," he murmured against her lips, sensing her urgency. "We have all night." But his eyes, dark and fiery, belied the calm in his voice. He was just as eager, just as hungry, but he was choosing to draw out the pleasure, to savor every moment of their unfolding intimacy. His fingers continued their tantalizing exploration, finding the soft curls, then the delicate folds. A touch that sent shivers of pure delight coursing through her. She felt herself opening to him, a wet, aching readiness that thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. Her legs parted, silently inviting him closer, deeper. He shifted, his body now covering hers more fully, his weight a delicious pressure. The hard ridge of his desire pressed against her, a potent reminder of what awaited them. She arched into him, a soft moan escaping her lips as his mouth descended to her throat, then lower, to the hollow between her collarbones. His tongue flicked out, a warm, wet caress that sent shivers through her. His kisses traveled further, down her chest, towards the swell of her breast. He paused, his lips hovering, his breath warm against her skin, before finally claiming her, his mouth closing over one nipple, suckling gently. A jolt, pure and primal, shot through her, radiating from her breast to the deepest core of her being. Her fingers tangled in his hair, holding him close, urging him on. He moved from one breast to the other, his tongue and lips working their magic, driving her wild with pleasure. She felt a delicious tension coiling in her belly, tightening with every masterful touch, every soft tug. Her body was alive, humming with a vibrant energy she had never felt so intensely before. He lifted his head, his eyes burning with a passion that took her breath away. "I want to feel you," he whispered, his voice thick with desire. "Completely." With a slow, deliberate movement, he peeled away her lace panties, his fingers brushing against her most sensitive skin as he did so. The air, though warm from the fire, felt cool against her suddenly exposed flesh. Then, he shed his own briefs, revealing himself fully to her. He was magnificent, a testament to raw masculine power, and her breath caught in her throat. He moved between her legs, settling himself against her, the hard, hot length of him pressing against her aching entrance. She instinctively arched, meeting his pressure, her body silently pleading for him to bridge the last distance between them. He paused, his gaze fixed on hers, a silent question in his eyes. She answered with a soft, urgent whimper, her fingers digging into the strong muscles of his shoulders. With a low groan he began to move, a slow, deliberate thrust that began their union. She gasped, a shock of exquisite pleasure, as he entered her, slowly, carefully, filling her completely. He paused again, allowing her body to adjust, to stretch around him, to acclimate to the incredible sensation of being utterly, completely filled by him. Her eyes fluttered closed, a wave of profound pleasure washing over her. She gripped him tightly, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist, pulling him deeper. The feeling was overwhelming, breathtaking, a sensation of belonging that settled deep in her soul. He began to move, a slow, rhythmic thrust that built in intensity with each stroke. He was deliberate, masterful, attuned to her every breath, every subtle shift of her body. She met him, matching his rhythm, her hips lifting to greet him, to welcome him deeper, to demand more. The world outside faded into a distant hum. There was only the heat of their skin, the slick slide of body against body, the soft gasps and moans that escaped their lips. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls, mirroring the flickering flames of passion within them. The rain, a steady lullaby, became the backdrop to their primal symphony. He leaned down, his mouth finding hers, claiming it in a deep, consuming kiss that mirrored the rhythm of their bodies. Their tongues tangled, their breaths mingled, their souls intertwined. She felt herself spiraling, losing herself in the exquisite pleasure he was building within her. Each thrust was deeper, more insistent, pushing her closer and closer to the precipice of release. Her muscles tightened, her senses sharpened, everything converging on the point of ultimate bliss. She cried out his name, a raw, primal sound torn from her throat, as the first wave of climax washed over her, an explosion of pure sensation that rippled through her entire being. He drove into her, a final, powerful thrust, as his own release came, a deep groan rumbling from his chest as he poured himself into her. They held each other tightly, trembling, shuddering, entangled in the aftermath of their shared ecstasy. For a long moment they lay there, entwined, their breathing slowly returning to normal, the only sounds the soft crackle of the fire and the diminishing patter of the rain. He didn't withdraw, but instead held her close, his weight a comforting presence, his body still deeply embedded within hers. He pressed a soft kiss to her temple, then her forehead. "Are you all right?" he murmured, his voice still thick with emotion. She could only nod, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes, tears of profound joy and gratitude. She had never felt so utterly cherished, so completely loved. Her fingers stroked the damp hair at the nape of his neck, a silent testament to the depth of her feelings. He shifted slightly, propping himself up on an elbow once more, his gaze tenderly searching hers. "You are incredible," he whispered, his thumb stroking her cheek. "My love." The words, so soft, so genuine, resonated deep within her. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling even more profound than the physical pleasure they had just shared. This was more than just passion, it was connection, a deep, abiding bond that felt ancient and new all at once. She smiled, a soft, contented smile. "And you?" she replied, her voice still a little breathless. "My everything." He leaned down, kissing her softly, deeply, a kiss that was full of promises of a future unfolding before them. He pulled the thick duvet up over them, tucking them in, creating a warm, secluded cocoon against the chill of the night. Her head rested on his shoulder, her ear pressed against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, a comforting rhythm that spoke of peace and belonging. The rain continued its gentle serenade outside, but within their haven a profound quiet had settled. The embers of the fire glowed warmly, casting a soft golden light that painted the room in hues of intimacy. She felt herself drifting, suspended between the lingering echoes of passion and the encroaching comfort of sleep, utterly content, utterly safe. She knew this was only the beginning of their story, a beautiful, sensual journey that had just truly begun to unfold. The night was long, and the promise of dawn, though distant, held the whisper of more shared moments, more unspoken desires, more profound connections yet to be discovered. She closed her eyes, a soft sigh escaping her lips, already dreaming of the morning. She closed her eyes, a soft sigh escaping her lips, already dreaming of the morning. When the morning finally arrived, it didn't burst forth with a harsh glare but rather seeped in, a gentle infiltration of pale pearlescent light through the gaps in the heavy curtains. It painted the room in soft grays and silvers, turning the familiar into something ethereal. She stirred, not from an alarm, but from an innate sense of warmth and a subtle shift in the weight beside her. Her body, still humming with the lingering echoes of the night, felt exquisitely heavy, deeply rested, yet incredibly alive. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered open, adjusting to the muted light. Her gaze, still hazy with sleep, first found the curve of a broad shoulder, the strong line of an arm thrown carelessly over the pristine white sheet. He was still asleep, his breathing a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the quietude of the room. A lock of dark hair had fallen across his forehead, softened by the morning light, and his lips, slightly parted, held a hint of a smile, as if he too were caught in a pleasant dream. A wave of tenderness, so potent it stole her breath, washed over her. It wasn't just the memory of their shared passion, glorious and transformative as it had been, but the quiet intimacy of this moment, watching him sleep, utterly vulnerable, utterly hers in this shared space. She shifted slightly, careful not to wake him, and drew her hand up, tracing the strong line of his jaw with the tips of her fingers, barely touching, just feeling the faint stubble, the warmth of his skin. He stirred, a low, rumbling sound in his chest, and then his eyes, the color of warm honey, slowly opened, finding hers. A slow smile spread across his face, a smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners, dissolving any remaining vestiges of sleep. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice a delicious rasp, deeper and softer than she remembered from the night before, a sound that vibrated through her very core. "Morning," she whispered back, her voice feeling a little thick, husky with emotion and the recent awakening. She couldn't tear her gaze from his. In the cool light of dawn, his eyes held a depth, a tenderness that was profoundly moving. There was no artifice, no pretense, just pure, unadulterated affection. He reached out, his hand finding hers, fingers intertwining, a silent, powerful affirmation of their connection. His thumb began to stroke the back of her hand, a feather-light touch that sent shivers of pleasure tracing pathways up her arm. "Slept well?" he asked, his gaze still holding hers, a question, a promise, a shared secret. "More than well," she confessed, a soft blush rising to her cheeks. "Perfectly, actually." She paused, then added, "You? Like I've been waiting my whole life to sleep next to you," he admitted, his voice dropping to a low, intimate register. The sincerity in his tone made her heart ache, a sweet, exquisite ache that felt like coming home. He pulled her a little closer, and she went willingly, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm wrapping around her waist. The scent of him, musk, clean skin, and something uniquely masculine, enveloped her, a comforting and exhilarating embrace. They lay like that for a long time, not speaking, just breathing together, the silence punctuated only by the distant calls of morning birds and the soft rustle of leaves outside the window. It was a silence rich with unspoken understanding, with the weight of shared experience and the lightness of new beginnings. Her fingers idly traced the strong muscles of his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her touch. The subtle shift as he breathed. She felt utterly safe, profoundly cherished. Finally, he stirred, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. As much as I'd love to stay here forever, I suspect the world might eventually notice our absence. She chuckled, a soft, warm sound. A few more minutes then? Always, he agreed, tightening his hold for a moment before reluctantly loosening it. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, and she watched the play of muscles in his back as he stretched, a magnificent lean strength that made her breath catch. He glanced back at her, a playful glint in his eyes. Coffee? Please, she practically purred, already anticipating the warm, bitter comfort. He disappeared into the adjoining kitchen, and she heard the soft clink of mugs, the whir of the coffee maker, domestic sounds that, in this context, felt incredibly romantic. She savored the quiet solitude for a moment, letting the warmth of the sheets and the lingering scent of him soak into her. Her body felt different this morning, lighter yet more grounded, as if a missing piece had finally fallen into place. When he returned, a steaming mug in each hand, he was wearing a pair of dark grey sweatpants, low on his hips, revealing a tantalizing glimpse of his lean torso. His hair was still delightfully rumpled, and his eyes, though fully awake now, still held that tender, knowing gaze. He handed her a mug, the warmth seeping into her hands, and then settled back onto the bed, propped against the headboard, his knee brushing hers. "Black, 2 sugars, right?" he asked, a hint of pride in his voice. She took a sip, the rich dark liquid a welcome jolt. "Perfect," she confirmed, meeting his gaze over the rim of the mug. "You remembered." "Some things are easy to remember," he said softly, his eyes lingering on her lips. The unspoken implication hung in the air, a delicate thread of renewed tension, a promise of desires still simmering beneath the surface. They talked then, in low, hushed tones, about the simple things, the beauty of the morning light, the plans for the day, mundane details that felt imbued with significance, simply because they were sharing them. He spoke of a small local market he knew, filled with fresh produce and artisanal goods, suggesting they might go explore it later. The idea filled her with a quiet thrill, not just for the market itself, but for the prospect of spending the day with him, discovering new facets of his world, and allowing him to discover more of hers. After they finished their coffee, he suggested a shower. "Or we could share one," he added, his voice a low rumble, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Her heart gave a little leap. The thought of the warm spray, the steam, his strong hands, made her skin tingle. I think I'd like that very much," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled. A slow, sensual curve of his lips that sent a delicious shiver down her spine. He rose, offering her his hand, and she took it, allowing him to pull her gently from the warmth of the bed. The cool air of the room kissed her skin, raising goosebumps, but the warmth of his hand, the heat radiating from his body so close to hers, was enough to chase away the chill. They walked hand in hand to the bathroom, a space transformed by the morning light filtering through a frosted window. Steam was already beginning to gather, hinting at the warmth to come. He turned on the shower, adjusting the temperature until the water streamed out in a perfect, inviting cascade. Without a word, he began to unbutton her silk pajamas, his fingers brushing against her skin, sending tiny electric shocks through her. Each button released felt like a deliberate unveiling, a sensual prelude. When the last button was undone, he gently pushed the silk from her shoulders, letting it fall to the floor in a soft pool around her feet. He then reached for his own sweatpants, peeling them down slowly, revealing the lean, hard planes of his body that she now knew so intimately. They stepped into the shower together, the warm spray instantly enveloping them, a comforting curtain of heat. He pulled her close, her back against his chest, his arms wrapping around her, holding her securely against him. Her head rested on his shoulder, the water sluicing over them both, washing away the last remnants of sleep, leaving only a heightened sense of awareness. He took the bar of soap, the delicate scent of lavender filling the air, and began to work it into a rich lather in his hands. Then, with exquisite tenderness, he began to wash her, starting with her shoulders, his strong fingers kneading away any lingering tension. The soap felt silken against her skin as he moved downwards, tracing the curve of her spine, the delicate hollows of her waist, the gentle swell of her hips. Each touch was deliberate, respectful, yet profoundly sensual, a continuation of their intimacy, a deepening of their bond. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closed, lost in the pure sensation. The water cascaded over them, mingling with the soap, creating a sensual symphony of touch and warmth. When he reached her legs, his hands stroking down her thighs, around her calves, and over her feet, she felt a delicious tremor ripple through her. It was an act of profound care, a silent language of love and devotion. Then it was her turn. She took the soap, turned to face him, and began to lather his chest, her fingers exploring the firm muscles, the fine scattering of hair that tickled her palms. She moved slowly, deliberately, enjoying the feel of his skin beneath her touch, the subtle power of his body. Her hands drifted lower, over his abdomen, down his strong legs, reveling in the tactile exploration. He groaned softly, a low guttural sound that vibrated through her, making her heart quicken. His eyes, dark and intense, watched her every move, reflecting the desire that was building between them once more. When they were both clean, rinsed thoroughly by the warm water, he turned off the shower. The sudden silence, save for the dripping of water, was profound. He reached for a plush, oversized towel, wrapping it around her, tucking it securely, then reached for another for himself. He gently rubbed her hair, then stepped back, his gaze sweeping over her, a deep appreciation in his eyes. "You are breathtaking," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. She felt a flush spread across her body, a warmth that had nothing to do with the steam. "You're not so bad yourself," she replied, a playful glint in her eyes, though her heart was thrumming a frantic rhythm. They dressed in casual clothes, comfortable for a day of exploring. She chose a soft sundress, light and airy, while he opted for a simple t-shirt and linen trousers. As they descended the stairs, the scent of freshly brewed coffee still lingered, and the house felt alive, imbued with the warmth of their shared morning. Breakfast was a leisurely affair in the sun-drenched kitchen. He made her scrambled eggs with herbs and toasted artisan bread, while she sliced fresh berries. They sat across from each other at a small wooden table by a window overlooking a lush garden, the morning sun streaming in, painting golden stripes across the floor. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences, shared smiles, and lingering glances. "Tell me about this market," she prompted, sipping her tea. He leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It's not far from here, a little village called St. Clair. Every Saturday, they set up stalls in the main square. You'll find everything: cheeses, cured meats, fresh produce from local farms, handmade crafts, beautiful flowers. There's a particular bakery there that makes the most incredible almond croissants. We could pick up some things for a picnic later." A picnic. The idea was enchanting. "That sounds wonderful," she said, her eyes shining. "I love exploring local markets." "I thought you might," he replied, his gaze soft. "I enjoy seeing things through your eyes. Everything feels brighter, more vibrant." His words touched her deeply. It wasn't just the physical intimacy they had shared, but this quiet, emotional connection that felt so profound. He saw her, truly saw her, and appreciated her perspective. This was a man who didn't just share a bed, but shared a world. They finished breakfast and prepared to leave. He took her hand as they walked out the door, the warmth of his palm a comforting presence. The sun was higher now, a golden orb in a sky of brilliant blue, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. The drive to St. Clair was a picturesque journey through rolling hills and vineyards, the landscape a tapestry of greens and golds. They listened to music softly, a mix of old jazz and contemporary folk, and talked about their lives, their dreams, their pasts, revealing snippets of themselves, slowly, carefully, building a foundation of understanding. She learned about his passion for ancient history, his quiet love for solitude, his family scattered across different continents. She, in turn, shared her own aspirations, her adventures, the small joys and sorrows that had shaped her. When they arrived at St. Clair, the village square was indeed bustling with activity. A vibrant sensory feast. The air was thick with the mingled scents of ripe fruit, savory cheeses, freshly baked bread, and a hint of blooming flowers. Stalls overflowed with colorful produce, ruby red tomatoes, emerald green lettuces, plump purple figs. Artisans displayed their wares, intricate pottery, hand-woven baskets, shimmering silk scarves. The cheerful chatter of vendors and shoppers created a lively melodic hum. He kept her hand firmly in his, guiding her through the throng. His presence beside her was a comforting anchor in the joyful chaos. "See that one?" He pointed to a stall laden with an array of cheeses, some soft and creamy, others hard and pungent. "They make the best goat cheese. We absolutely need some for our picnic." She nodded enthusiastically, her senses alight. They moved from stall to stall, sampling small bites of cheese, tasting sun-ripened olives, inhaling the intoxicating aroma of warm bread. He bought a crusty baguette, still warm from the oven, and a small jar of local honey. She picked out a bunch of vibrant sunflowers, their sunny faces a perfect reflection of her mood. At the bakery he'd mentioned, the almond croissants were indeed a revelation, flaky, buttery, with a sweet, nutty filling that melted on the tongue. They shared one, breaking it apart, each savoring the delicate layers, their fingers brushing as they reached for pieces. It was a simple act, yet imbued with a profound intimacy, a shared pleasure that transcended mere food. As they wandered, he would occasionally lean down, his lips brushing her ear as he pointed out something interesting, or shared a quiet observation. Each time, a shiver would run through her, a delicious awareness of his proximity, the warmth of his breath on her skin. The romantic tension, a delightful hum beneath the surface, was always present, a constant reminder of the deeper connection they shared. They eventually found a quiet corner of the square, a small bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, where they sat and watched the world go by. They talked about the people they saw, inventing stories for them, sharing laughter that felt easy and genuine. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated contentment, a quiet oasis in the midst of the lively market. "This is perfect," she sighed, leaning her head against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. "Thank you for bringing me here." He turned his head, pressing a soft kiss into her hair. "The pleasure is all mine. I told you, everything is better with you." The afternoon unfolded like a dream. They gathered their provisions, a selection of cheeses, some cured ham, the fresh baguette, plump grapes, and 2 bottles of local sparkling lemonade. He led her away from the market, down a winding cobblestone path that eventually opened onto a breathtaking vista. A sprawling vineyard stretching as far as the eye could see, bathed in the golden light of the afternoon sun. At the edge of the vineyard, nestled beneath an ancient olive tree, was a small, secluded spot with a weathered wooden bench. He spread a blanket on the grass, and they began to unpack their picnic. The simple act of arranging food, pouring drinks, felt like a ritual, a celebration of their shared moment. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, the flavors enhanced by the fresh air and the stunning scenery. They talked about their dreams, about the future, about the unexpected joy of finding each other. He spoke of his work, the challenges and rewards, and she listened, fascinated by his dedication and intellect. She shared her own passions, her creative pursuits, and he listened with an attentive gaze that made her feel truly heard, truly valued. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple, a profound sense of peace settled over them. He reached for her hand across the blanket, his fingers lacing with hers, and squeezed gently. "I feel like I've known you forever," he murmured. His voice soft, almost a whisper, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "Me too," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. "It feels right, like this is where I'm meant to be." He turned to her then, his eyes reflecting the sunset, filled with a depth of emotion that made her heart swell. He leaned in, slowly, giving her time to respond, to meet him halfway. His lips, soft and warm, found hers, a gentle, tender kiss that spoke of affection, understanding, and a burgeoning love that was still finding its voice. It wasn't the fiery passion of the night before, but a deeper, more resonant kiss, a promise of enduring connection. The kiss deepened, slowly, exquisitely, a soft sigh escaping her lips as she leaned into him, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. The world around them faded, leaving only the warmth of his lips, the scent of his skin, the gentle brush of their bodies. It was a kiss that tasted of wine and bread, of fresh air and burgeoning love, a kiss that felt like the beginning of everything. As they pulled apart, breathless and smiling, the first stars began to prickle through the darkening sky. The air grew cooler, carrying the earthy scent of the vineyard. He pulled the blanket tighter around them, drawing her into his embrace, and they sat there, wrapped in each other's warmth, watching the night unfold, a silent testament to the beauty of their day and the profound sensual journey that lay before them. The night was long, and the promise of dawn, though distant, held the whisper of more shared moments, more unspoken desires, more profound connections yet to be discovered. She closed her eyes, a soft sigh escaping her lips, already dreaming of the morning, and all the mornings to come. His hand, warm and calloused, cupped her cheek, tilting her face gently towards his. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes that shimmered with a soft, liquid light, reflecting the distant stars. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers with a tenderness that promised more, a slow, deliberate claiming. The kiss deepened, a silent conversation of longing and contentment, until the very air around them hummed. "Let's go inside," he whispered against her mouth, his voice a low, resonant murmur that vibrated through her entire being. He rose first, offering a hand that she took without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, a silent pledge as they walked from the starlit porch into the soft lamplight of their bedroom. The room felt like a sanctuary, imbued with a quiet warmth. He turned to her, his gaze sweeping over her, a slow, appreciative caress that made her skin tingle. With deliberate slowness, he reached for the first button of her blouse, his knuckles brushing her collarbone, sending a shiver of delicious anticipation through her. Each button released felt like a soft unraveling, a shedding of the day's composure. Her blouse slipped from her shoulders, pooling at her feet, followed by the delicate lace of her camisole. The cool air brushed against her bared skin, only to be instantly warmed by his eyes, by the heat radiating from his proximity. She watched him, mesmerized, as his own shirt followed suit, revealing the lean planes of his chest, the strong line of his shoulders, shadowed by the soft light. She reached out, her fingers tracing the warm skin, feeling the subtle ripple of muscle beneath. A soft gasp escaped her as he pulled her closer, their bare chests meeting, a startling, exquisite contact that stole her breath. His hands slid down her back, finding the clasp of her skirt, releasing it with a practiced ease that made her knees weak. The fabric whispered down her legs, joining the others on the floor. She stepped out of them, shedding the last vestiges of the day, standing before him in nothing but the soft moonlight filtering through the window, and the shimmering desire in his eyes. He knelt then, with a reverence that touched her soul, his lips pressing a soft kiss to her abdomen, then to the delicate skin just above her knee, sending warmth spreading through her veins. He guided her gently towards the bed, its crisp white sheets inviting and cool against her skin as she lay back. He followed, his weight settling beside her, then above her, supporting himself on his forearms, his gaze still holding hers, a universe of emotion passing between them. He kissed her eyelids, the bridge of her nose, the curve of her jaw, each touch a promise, each breath a prayer. His fingers threaded through her hair, tilting her head back slightly, exposing the delicate line of her throat to his questing lips. A soft moan escaped her as his touch grew bolder, more insistent, exploring the curves and hollows of her body, igniting a fire that had simmered all day. Their bodies met fully, a symphony of touch and sensation. The world outside faded, replaced by the rhythm of their breathing, the whisper of skin against skin, the soft murmurs of pleasure that escaped their lips. They moved together, a dance as old as time, each touch, each thrust, a deepening of the bond that held them. She arched into him, her fingers digging into his shoulders, her senses overwhelmed by the scent of him, the feel of him, the exquisite pressure that built and built. The climax was a wave, sweeping through them both, a profound release that left them breathless and intertwined, lost in the exquisite present. The tension dissolved into a sweet, lingering ache, a hum that resonated deep within their bones. He collapsed beside her, pulling her close, her head resting on his chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. His arm was a warm weight around her, his breath soft against her hair. They lay there for a long time, the only sounds the chirping of crickets from outside and the gentle whisper of their breathing. The moonlight painted silver streaks across the room, illuminating their joined forms, a tableau of peace and profound intimacy. She felt utterly cherished, completely seen, and loved beyond measure. The journey of the day, the tender unfolding of their desires, had culminated in this perfect, quiet communion. He kissed the top of her head, a soft, possessive gesture. "My love," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep and contentment. She didn't reply, simply snuggled closer, her hand finding his and intertwining their fingers once more. The night deepened around them, a velvet cloak of serenity. The promise of dawn still held the whisper of more shared moments, more unspoken desires, but for now, the dream had become reality. She closed her eyes, a soft smile playing on her lips, already dreaming of the morning, and all the mornings to come, knowing with absolute certainty that every sunrise with him would be a continuation of this beautiful, sensual journey.